Hare Krishna. So today we're on the 26th part of of the Bhagavad Gita portion of our Iskana DC Bhakti Shastri course. And today we'll be finishing up chapter 12. And so the middle six chapters, 7 through 12, were considered to be focused very strongly on bhakti. And we're going to finish it out here with kind of a bang. We did a little more than half of the chapter last time, where there was some clarification given and about what type of worship is the best, and it was kind of more of a kind of a reinforcement of something that had been mentioned before, really, and then a further glorification of pure bhakti. That's the best possible course to take in spiritual life, the essence of all dharma, as Baladev Vidyabhushan puts it. And today we saved this particular section as 8 verses only, but it's very concentrated verses. It's going to be talking about the qualities, the character and behavior of advanced bhaktas, people who are practicing devotional service. And Krishna keeps repeating in each verse how such persons are very, very dear to him. You know, we've heard several times in the Gita so far how Krishna is the well-wishing friend of everybody. And here he openly declares how the devotees especially who have taken up this practice of ananya, or we call ananya bhakti or kevala bhakti or pure bhakti, where they take exclusive shelter of Krishna, become very, very dear to him. And that's a wonderful thing, that the Supreme Lord begins to care for us very deeply. Actually, he already does, but especially in this case, his love for us becomes activated. It's always there, but it's dormant because we're not paying attention to him. But so this is beautiful. We're going to the first we have 2 verses together to begin with, 13 and 14. So we're going 13 through 20, the end of the chapter, and this very, very concentrated here. These 2 verses, and so we're going to spend quite a bit of time on these 2 verses. A disproportionate amount of time compared to the others. And the other commentators have done so as well, because of the density of it, and really many of the other qualities and characteristics and behaviors mentioned in the succeeding verses are either repetitions, something that could be derived from them, special cases, individual cases of general principles stated here, or corollaries that would be expected from the qualities here. So these are very important, and we're gonna kind of go through them one at a time, actually, and look at some of the meanings and things. So the verse, it sounds quite simple when you just read out the English, which we'll do here. One who is not envious, but is a kind friend to all living entities, who does not think himself a proprietor and is free from false ego, who is equal in both happiness and distress, who is tolerant, always satisfied, self-controlled, and engaged in devotional service with determination, his mind and intelligence fixed on me, such a devotee of mine is very dear to me. So you see, you speak it pretty quickly, it rolls off the tongue, but if you look at each part there's quite a number of qualities there. And they're not, none of them are very simple. So that's why we're going to look at them here. That's what makes the devotees of the Lord very special. They develop these amazing, unexpected qualities that we don't find other places, at least not in that kind of depth. And Prabhupada says this is coming again to the point of pure devotional service. So we left off last time. He says, now we're picking up a pure devotional service, because Arjuna had asked the question last week whether it was better to worship Krishna's personal form or his impersonal manifestation. And Krishna answered that his personal form, and he glorified this practice of exclusive shelter of Krishna. And so Prabhupada says, now we're coming again to the point of pure devotional service, the other discussions being over. The Lord is describing the transcendental qualifications of a pure devotee in these two verses. Okay? So we'll look at them kind of one after another, and we'll look at, I've done something, I looked at, if you use the online Veda base, all of the word-for-word translations, they're links. And you can click them, and you can see where Prabhupada in the rest of his works has given, other, sometimes they're the same, but has translated that word where it appears in different places. And so sometimes you can get a little broader understanding of what's going on. I've also looked at Baladev Vidyabhushan and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. They give commentaries and sometimes alternate meanings and extended meanings. And I've also looked at we have two disciples of Srila Prabhupada, Garuda Prabhu and Hridayananda Das Goswami, who have translated the Bhagavad Gita in a very literal fashion. And so I've also taken a peek at their translations. And so we tried to bring some things together here so that we can understand these different qualities. So the first one is Advaishta. Prabhupada translates it as non-envious. And the other commentators say they say no hatred or disdain towards others. So it's not the envy where I'm jealous sort of thing. Usually when Prabhupada uses the word envy, it means like we wish somebody harm. We don't wish them well. More often than what we usually think of as envy is somebody is has something we desire, and when we're jealous of them. It's more of a jealousy type of thing. So and that's what it seems to be here. Prabhupada oftentimes uses envious in that way. And then Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, Advaishta means that a person does not have hatred even for those who hate him. Rather, one has friendliness towards him. Maitra, these are the qualities afterwards. He's getting a little ahead of the game here. But one is merciful to them, thinking that they should not end up in unfortunate circumstances. And that's the karuna. Karuna, the friendly and merciful or compassionate qualities. We'll discuss those separately, but his definition of Advaita included those. This is the non-envious or lacking hatred or disdain. So this is even for those who hate him. If a devotee is hated, even then there's not any hostility. And then Prabhupada says in the purport, he says, nor does a devotee become his enemy's enemy. He thinks, this person is acting as my enemy due to my own past misdeeds, so it is better to suffer than to protest. So Prabhupada here gives the background thought process with that. That's why they have a certain vision of reality that informs that kind of behavior. So that adds to that. He's confirming what Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says. He doesn't become his enemy's enemy. Right? But then he explains what they're thinking. So that's important for us if we want to develop these qualities. And then he says, also in the purport, he says, a devotee is always kind to everyone, even to his enemy. And then, so we'll go further. The second one is Maitra, or friendly. And in his different translations in different places, Prabhupada said very friendly to everyone, a real friend, never cheating anyone, and thus a true friend. So a real friend, so not just kind of nice and pleasant, but someone who's a genuine friend. I just got a message here that I forgot to share my screen from some of those. Okay, hopefully that should work now. Some of the people listening online can't see the PowerPoint presentation. I think I fixed it now. And so so it means not just a kind of a pleasantness, but a real, well-wishing thing, very friendly, a real friend, and never cheating anyone, and thus a true friend. And then Baladev Vijayabhushan says, and he's giving a background reason for it, like Prabhupada did for the previous one. He shows affection towards them, since they are also the abode of the Supreme Lord. He's speaking that there's the Paramatma. And in every body there's the soul, and then there's a super soul. So he's thinking like that. And so because of that, he's friendly to everybody. Usually we are friendly because of externals. How are they behaved? Are they useful to us? How do they behave toward us? How do our personalities mesh or not? There's certain external reasons, and so therefore we're usually not friendly to everybody. We have our friends and our foes and people that we don't care for as much. But because the vision of the devotees is deeper, they see beyond that. Those things may still be there. That they're not as compatible with everybody. Some people may not treat them as well, and other people may treat them other ways. But they won't take that very seriously, and they have a deeper vision, and will thus still be friendly. And then Karuna, Prabhupada says kindly in his word for word translation, and in other places he says merciful, compassionate, very kind-hearted, very merciful. So it carries this kind of thing. So we really, so it kind of with the Maitra and the Karuna, it really makes that really well-wishing sort of thing. And so Baladev Vijayabhushan says he is compassionate, Karuna, lamenting for persons who are suffering, thinking that no one should suffer for any reason. So really, sometimes if we're not in very good consciousness and people mistreat us, we may wish them to, suffer in the same way, or we think that people who act inappropriately, deserve suffering. It says that a devotee is thinking that even people who do horrible things, they're not happy that they're suffering. They understand why. There's a karma that's involved. But they know that underneath everything, that they are spirit souls filled with good qualities. And so they lament the fact that that people don't have the understanding to understand their own spiritual selves, and get overwhelmed by these negative qualities and cause themselves pain. So they think even their very very, very vicious behavior is really external, and they wish better for them. Next we have Nirmama and Nirahankara. They go together. First, Nirmama says, with no sense of proprietorship, free from possessiveness, without ownership, uninterested. Or other notions there. And Garuda Prabhu, he says, without sense of mind. So it fits with the other ones. Possessiveness, ownership, proprietorship. And then Nirahankara, without, Prabhupada translates it very literally, without the ego or the false ego. And also he's translated as without pride and unattached. So that's what it means. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, not thinking of the body as the self. And Garuda Prabhu says, without the notion of I am acting. And His Holiness Hridayananda Maharaj, he says, with no I and mine concepts, these concepts of I and mine. This notion of the false ego, we've talked about it earlier on. We talked about the different levels of, it's called the subtle body. We have the physical body, then the subtle body, the mind, the buddhi, and the ahankara. That sense of, it's a sense of self that's something other than ourselves as a soul. That's what it is. It gives us a sense of selfishness. That's why no sense of proprietorship also. Those two will go together generally, without I and mine. You have to have I to have mine. And if you have this notion of I, then you tend to gravitate towards mine as well. So there is any way that we identify ourselves with anything other than we, as we talked about, the soul, the seer, the consciousness, as Prabhupada calls it, false ego, because we have a real identity, a spiritual identity. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that these two qualities make it possible for the devotees never to hate others. And remember, if we remember early on in the second chapter, Krishna was trying to, he was doing two things. He was trying to give Arjuna a knowledge, but he was also trying to make Arjuna feel a little bit less terrorized by the notion of having to kill his relatives. He had this tremendous aversion that was overcoming him. And he said that the soul neither kills nor is killed. It's simply the bodies that are being killed. That's what he implies by that. So these things are external. The whole actions of the war were external. The souls were remaining. That's why he told Arjuna from the beginning, your whole freak out at having to take part in this battle is coming from this lack of understanding about the soul. So everything is happening externally. The soul is not changed. It's eternal. It's only the bodies that are killing other bodies. That's what's going to happen during the battle. And so the things that happen to us, whether it's harsh words or insults, or just unfriendly behavior, things that people may do to us. Usually, for the most part, the things that happen, the negative interactions we have with people, involve something less than warfare and killing. They also fit under that thing. It's not, the souls aren't participating in that. So when people are giving us trouble, or we give other people trouble, it's our bodies and minds. The externals are giving trouble to the other person's externals. So if there's that clear understanding that I'm a soul, and therefore these other things are, Baladev Vijayabhushan says, are just prakriti, are just the Lord's energy. We talked about the energy of the Lord. So everything that with false ego we're identifying with, whether it be the world around us, the physical objects, our body, mind, intelligence, or ego, these things are not us. They're not us, and therefore we don't own them. Because we've already understood that Krishna creates everything else. He's the owner. So if you have that particular understanding, it's easier to have this non-hatred. It's easier not to take the difficulties that are caused to us, or even the apparent good things that are done for us, as seriously as if we have the normal sort of consciousness where we think this is me, and Arjuna was thinking, I'm killing my relatives. This is a terrible thing to do, and I'm damaging them in a really extreme way. But Krishna said, no, it's just external. So it's like that. And then Prabhupada says in his purport, he says, Nirmama means that the devotee does not attach much importance to the pains and trouble pertaining to the body, because he knows perfectly well that he is not the material body. And that's the nirahankara part. He does not identify with the body, therefore he is freed from the conception of false ego and is equipoised in happiness and distress. So Prabhupada there, he brings those two concepts together, the lack of ownership and the lack of false identification, a false self. And then we have three words that go together, sama, dukkha, sukha. And this we hear so many different times in the Bhagavad Gita. that somebody is equal in distress and happiness. And sama kind of means the same, it's very close to the modern English word. And so Prabhupada says in the purport, whenever a devotee, and we understood some of the reasons behind that, just from that nirmama nirahankara, whenever a devotee is in distress or has fallen into difficulty, he thinks that it is the Lord's mercy upon him. So Prabhupada's giving the real background to this. He thinks, thanks to my past misdeeds, I should suffer far, far greater than I am suffering now. So it is by the mercy of the Supreme Lord that I am not getting all the punishment I am due. I am just getting a little by the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It says, therefore he is always calm, quiet, and patient despite many distressful conditions. So you see here that that persons in knowledge also don't blame the immediate agent of their suffering. So not only may they see the soul, understand a person as a soul, and understand that their bad behavior isn't their essence, but even that bad behavior they understand is the root of that. The fact that someone is causing them trouble is from their own past misdeeds. Right? It's karma. So if person A doesn't mistreat you, person B will. Somebody else will be. It's in one sense it's a faceless sort of thing, that if you've mistreated others, you will be mistreated. And so if it's coming your way, you're the one really who's causing it. And then when somebody is a devotee, he's thinking that even this is not coming just as ordinary karma, kind of mechanistically, but that the Lord, out of his kindness, has minimized. He probably says, I'm getting only a little of my due by the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And they're thinking, that this is good for me, that I can learn from this. We'll talk about this later on a little bit, how the things that happen to us can be useful to us in developing these qualities and deepening them. So we're hearing quite a bit of the mentality and the understanding behind these qualities, and that's important for us to take note of if we want to try to develop them ourselves. And Garuda Prabhu, his literal translation is, who is the same, sama, in suffering and happiness. Baldev Vijayabhushan says, he is not agitated by joy in the face of comfortable circumstances, or by distress in the face of miserable circumstances, because he is tolerant. And so he's foreshadowing the next quality, kshami, or the tolerance of those circumstances. Okay, so that's what it is. We'll find out in the next verse. There's kind of two components of that. One of them, we can mention it now, that there's the same maybe acts the same. Krishna told this to Arjuna, that you have to tolerate these sorts of things and do the right thing, even if it's not pleasant for you. But you still may not feel great about it, but you'll do it, and that's equality in action. But then there's the next verse will talk about kind of equality of your emotions and your feelings about it, which is a little even deeper. Okay, so let's go on. So the next one that Baldev Vijayabhushan kind of already mentioned was shami, or being, and Prabhupada says forgiving, and Garuda says patient. So it's that sort of thing. And then Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says kshami means having tolerance, coming from the root ksham, meaning to endure. Okay. So forgiving, patient, tolerant, related items, and you get kind of the meaning there. Next one is a really important one. Really, it's not. They don't talk so much about it, but it'll be mentioned repeatedly. Santushta, satisfied, and Prabhupada other places translates as perfectly satiated, pleased, and pacified. We've talked about this before, how most of our activities are impelled by a lack of satisfaction. And we heard how anger comes when our desires are frustrated, and so many things like this. And so this is a really powerful one here that really supports all of the other ones in a serious way. I would say we can see this a little bit in our day-to-day lives, that if we're if we're in a good mood, having a good day, and people maybe don't treat us so well, or something unexpected and unpleasant happens, or all these various things are going on, we may deal with it much more cheerfully than if we're having a really rotten day and we feel miserable, and we become very, very sensitive, even hypersensitive to everyone and everything. So you see, if there's real satisfaction, automatically some of these other qualities will manifest, and they're certainly supported by it. And in his purport, Prabhupada says he is tolerant, and he is satisfied with whatever comes by the grace of the Supreme Lord. He does not endeavor much to achieve something with great difficulty, therefore he is always joyful. We talked about this in the Nectar of Instruction, where we want to really greedy, where we want to perform all these very difficult tasks to try to gain something great. So if you're satisfied, you don't need to take extreme measures to try to satisfy your dissatisfaction. And we see that actions generally is motivated by that. We feel dissatisfied and we have hopes of becoming satisfied. And Baladev Bhushan, he gives a little bit different meaning even. He says he has a peaceful heart, whether he gains or loses. So when you have this kshami, you have a peaceful heart. So I like the way he put that. Forgiving, patient, tolerant, and with a peaceful heart. You're existing with a peaceful heart. The devotees are like that. And then the next ones are satatam, always, and yogi, and Prabhupada translate this time as one engaged in devotion. He's meaning a bhakti yogi here. And he said, Prabhupada says in the purport, he is a completely perfect mystic. So in this case, he's using yogi as translating yogi as mystic. This is from the purport, because he is fixed in the instructions received from the spiritual master. This he gets from Baladev Bhushan. That he emphasizes that he's always engaged in yoga or engaged in devotion, but following the instructions given by their spiritual master. It's not a whimsical thing. And then next we have yata atma, or self-controlled. Prabhupada in the purport says senses controlled. Garuda Prabhu, he makes a very literal translation. So atma can refer to a lot of things. He says whose self is controlled. It just means literally self. And so depending on our perspective, it can be in the body, it can be in the mind, it can be the soul, it can be in the senses, depending on what we're considering to be the self. So it can have all these different meanings. That's why we have Prabhupada also said, self-controlled, but he says the senses when in his purport. And then Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he gives an explanation of this one and also foreshadows the next one. He says his mind is restrained. So he's saying mind. And he's taking it that way. Yata Atma. It is without agitation. Even if his mind, so all these are true. So, all the different versions of self, in this case with a devotee, all of them are controlled. Even if his mind happens to become disturbed, he does not resort to Ashtanga yoga or other processes to bring about peace. He remains convinced that he should perform only Ananya Bhakti. And he says this is the next, that's his explanation of the next one, this Drida Nishchayaha, with determination. It's interesting. So he says, even if somehow the mind or the senses aren't so controlled, he still keeps faithful in his practice of bhakti, knowing that they will come under control by that process. He doesn't lose his faith. Dhrida nishchayaha. Dhrida has that kind of determination and nishchaya, steadiness concept to it, and Prabhupada translates it as with determination. Garuda Prabhu translates it as firm resolve, and Baladev Vidyabhushan as firmly convinced. We talked about that, nishchayat, in the Nectar of Instruction, having that confidence, and we talked about faith. That's a central aspect of pure devotion. That we're convinced that simply by serving Krishna, that everything is attained, and that you don't need any other process. You don't need to take any other. There's no other means necessary, and we're counting simply on Krishna's kindness towards us and His already existing relationship with us from His side of things. And that simply if we show our interest and try to revive that relationship, we will come to our original condition, which is our eternal spiritual nature, which is who we are. So by coming to who we are, there's no greater goal than that. And that simply by worshiping Krishna, Krishna helps us. And so that's what in the Nectar of Instruction, Prabhupada said that there's a confidence that this is the highest thing, and that Krishna will help you. So it's the best path to achieve the highest thing. And Prabhupada says in the purport, he is not swayed by false arguments, because no one can lead him from the fixed determination of devotional service. He is fully conscious that Krishna is the eternal Lord, so no one can disturb him. We talked about in the 10th chapter, in verse 8, how understanding how Krishna is the source of everything and controlling everything helps us to develop that kind of conviction and faith that worshiping Krishna is sufficient for everything. I'm going to have a little external noise here. I'm sorry for the beeping. We've got a little backup beeper outside, so please pardon that for a moment. And then there's Mai Arpita Mana Buddhi, which Prabhupada translates in the verse translates mind and intelligence fixed on me. So there's Mai is upon me. Arpita is engaged, or Prabhupada says fixed in the smooth translation, and it has some. He also gives other in other places arpita, because there's a sense here of offering. Our object is offered into the sacrificial fire and things. So he's surrendered. This arpita means he says engaged, or in the word for word he says engaged. So the mind and intelligence is engaged in Krishna, and it's fixed. He says in the verse translation, but in other places he's translated arpita as surrendered, given, placed, offered. I've got surrendered here twice. Fixed, entrusted, dedicated, and then absorbed, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur puts. So there's this notion that not just thinking of Krishna and not just putting the intelligence, but there's this surrendered, offered, absorbed, dedicated, entrusted. There's a certain mood there. And not just kind of somehow thinking of Krishna in a mechanical way, but there's something coming from the heart. And mana, the mind, and buddhi, the intelligence. So the word here with the most meanings is arpita, which I think helps to enrich the understanding of mind and intelligence fixed on me. That fixed, there's dedication, there's trust, there's absorption, there's surrender, there's a mood of offering. So there's something from the heart that's happening there. And then Prabhupada says, all these qualifications enable him to fix his mind and intelligence entirely on the Supreme Lord. And then Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says the reverse. So this is interesting. He says the cause of all of this is mentioned. He is absorbed in meditating and contemplating on me, Maya Arpita Mano Buddhi. So Prabhupada is saying that the different qualities and qualifications, the elements of qualities and behavior and character, allow that person to attain this thing of being able to fix the mind and intelligence on the Lord. And we can imagine how that's the case, right? If we're thinking, if we're so worried about the externals, if we're not tolerant, if we're thinking in terms of I and mine, if we're have hatred and disdain for others, if we don't have friendliness, if we don't have compassion and mercy, if we don't have these other qualities, we're going to be caught up in every little detail of life, and everything. Every little action makes so much difference to us. We understand when we come to the soul platform, lose that I and mine sort of thing. If we understand, even like Arjuna was supposed to, that even the battle is something external. Then what about the little things that annoy us all the time? And so if we're caught up in all these things, because our happiness, we're not satisfied, right? If we're not satisfied, then we're looking for satisfaction. We're very upset when things go contrary to our desires and expectations. So every little thing matters so much. So we're distracted. So it takes our mind away from Krishna. But also Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's explanation makes sense too, and they're both true at the same time. Because if we're remembering Krishna, okay, then naturally the kind of understandings we heard some of the background understandings that help to support those qualities, and help to make them manifest. And if you have the understanding that I'm the servant of Krishna, everything belongs to Krishna, I'm a spirit soul, I'm not these things, that there's karma, that the Lord is acting mercifully towards me even when things I don't want are happening. Those things you'll remember when you remember Krishna. Those are reinforced by that. So it's working both ways at once. The more that we develop the qualities, the more we can remember Krishna. The more we remember Krishna, the more we can develop the qualities. That's really how it works. And then Prabhupada says further in his purport that such a standard of devotional service is undoubtedly very rare, but a devotee becomes situated in that stage by following the regulative principles of devotional service. This is something we're going to talk. We're just going to remember this, and we're going to pick this up again. That it says that one becomes situated in this stage by following the regular principles of devotional service. So through sadhana, through practice, we're able to develop these qualities. And so we're going to run across that again, and we'll talk about that a little bit at the end. So that verse we went through kind of exhaustively here. There's probably much more to say, but we're going to cover that in more depth than the others. And so now we're on to 15, and you can understand here that there's some of this follows from what we heard before. He by whom no one is put into difficulty, and who is not disturbed by anyone, who is equipoised in happiness and distress, fear and anxiety, is very dear to me. Okay, that's the verse. And Prabhupada says, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says here, he says, one who has unflinching devotion for the personality of Godhead has all the good qualities of the demigods. And he's quoting Srimad Bhagavatam, 5th canto, 18th chapter, 12th verse. By this statement it is understood that other qualities which please the Lord also automatically appear by the constant performance of bhakti to me. Please hear about these. And he says 5 verses describe these qualities. And Prabhupada says a few of a devotee's qualifications are further being described. So here again, Vishwanath Thakur, just like Prabhupada mentioned at the end of the last verse, that these good qualities emerge through devotion, through bhakti. And the reason it happens that way is that they're intrinsic to the soul. Our deepest identity is that we're devotees of the Lord. We have devotion for the Lord. And all of these qualities are intrinsic qualities of the soul. So as the soul is awakened, as our understanding of ourselves as soul is awakened, the negative qualities that are not part of the soul kind of magically seem to begin to disappear, and almost like magic, some things that we didn't have, these good qualities begin to manifest. We're going to come back to this at the end of this today's lesson. There's confusion about that. Sometimes people take this and to say that we don't have to try to develop these qualities. We wait until they come automatically, like that. And Prabhupada says, since the devotee is kind to everyone, he does not act in such a way as to put others into anxiety. At the same time, if others try to put a devotee into anxiety, he is not disturbed. Similar to what we had before. And then Baladev Vijayabhushan says, also others do not act to cause distress to him because they know he is not hostile to anyone. So sometimes Prabhupada, or even in the Bhagavad Gita, sometimes it says that someone doesn't have an enemy. Or Prabhupada says it has no enemy. There's another case like this where there's two senses of it. That if a person, like in this case, it says here, they never cause any anxiety to others because of their kindness and compassion and mercifulness and understanding of the connection of others with God, and also they even if people try to cause him anxiety, he doesn't have it. And then, but also Baladev Vijayabhushan says, often because of their nature, oftentimes people will treat them more kindly. And so also there's this notion that someone was without an enemy. And that can have both of those two senses. That because of their character, people generally will be kind to them and not enemies. But even if they are, the person won't take them as an enemy. So they have no enemies. Either because the people act nicely towards them, or because they simply don't take them as an enemy. So if you ask them who's their enemy, they don't have one. And so here we'll take a look at the characteristics here briefly. Harsha is, Prabhupada says, from happiness, and in other places he gives its delight, exuberance, elation, joy, jubilation. Almarsha, distress, indignation, intolerance, anger, vengeance, fury. Bhaya is fear, udvega, anxiety, and mukta is free. Prabhupada says equipoised in his translation, and the literal translation more is free from that, freed from that, or free of it. And Baladev Vijayabhushan says he does not have to do anything to avoid them. He is not touched, a little typo in my PowerPoint here, by these emotions at all. And so he's saying that these are emotions. So this is how it's a little bit different from the other place where they're equal in happiness and distress can mean also that you act equally. That Arjuna, even though he didn't feel like it, may participate in the battle. He tolerates these things. But otherwise, also we may not have any emotions. He may, and the verse after where Krishna tells Arjuna, it's 2:14, where he says you should tolerate. The next one he talks about being equal, which means that you don't even feel the emotions of happiness, distress, fear, and anxiety. These are the material ones. You just see your duty, and you see your connection with Krishna. Spiritual joy may be there, but an ordinary joy won't be there. You'll see things clearly enough that this is something external that's going on. I'm simply serving Krishna, and so it's a more thoroughgoing equality there. They also will act the same in those conditions, and in this case, they won't even have the usual emotions. They're not tolerating these various emotions, but their realization is deeper, and they don't even feel it. So he does not have to do anything to avoid them. He is not touched by these emotions at all. And then Prabhupada says in his purport, he says, "It is by the grace of the Lord that he is so practiced that he is not disturbed by any outward disturbance. Actually, because the devotee is always engrossed in Krishna consciousness and engaged in devotional service, such material circumstances cannot move him. Generally, a materialistic person becomes very happy when there is something for his sense gratification and his body. But when he sees that others have something for their sense gratification and he hasn't, he is sorry and envious. When he is expecting some retaliation from an enemy, he is in a state of fear, and when he cannot successfully execute something, he becomes dejected." So this type of mentality isn't present with the advanced devotees. Moving on to 16, I see it's going to be a little bit of a challenge to finish today, even though it's only a small number of verses. It's so dense. And then here, 16, the translation is, "My devotee, who is not dependent on the ordinary course of activities," and that's all the translation of this one word, anapeksha, "who is pure, expert, without cares, free from all pains, and not striving for some result, is very dear to me." So let's take some of these here. The first one, that anapeksha, is the in the verse translation, is not dependent on the ordinary course of activities. The kind of literal translation Prabhupada gives in the word meanings is just neutral. And other places he has disinterested, indifferent, not dependent on anything material. This is how he puts it. And he explains then further in the purport, he says, "Money may be offered to a devotee, but he should not struggle to acquire it. If automatically, by the grace of the Supreme, money comes to him, he is not agitated." And Vishwanath Chakravartita says, "Anapeksha means devoid of expectations from material work." And Baladev Vidyabhushan says, "Without aspirations, enjoying what comes of its own accord." So there's the dependence upon Krishna. Krishna already has mentioned before how he preserves what the devotees have and carry to them what they lack, and they understand that the different the changes in the external circumstances don't reach to their real selves, and so they're not looking for happiness in this world. They're not so concerned about avoiding material unhappiness. They're simply concerned with their soul and their relationship with Krishna. So when we act, we're usually thinking about what the result will be. I'm trying to do something for a particular result that I think is going to make me happy or going to remove some unhappiness. It's motivated activity. So when the devotees are acting, it's not motivated in that way. Whatever comes, comes. And they're satisfied that way. The other qualities mentioned here, Shuchi, pure, and both Prabhupada and Baladev Vidyabhushan says this refers to both internal and external purity. So they're clean on the outside, but they also, because of their practice of devotion, become clean from the inside, and that means removing the negative qualities and beginning to develop these very wonderful qualities. Daksha, expert, and Prabhupada and Baladev Vidyabhushan explain it like this. Prabhupada says a devotee is always expert because he fully knows the essence of all activities of life, and he is convinced of the authoritative scriptures. So he's using he knows how to act because he's following the scriptures, and knows, he says, the essence of all activities of life. So he's an expert at life in that way. People have so many ideas about what life is for, what's the meaning of life, and how to achieve it. But he says because they're convinced of the revealed scriptures, they have real knowledge about that. This is what I should do. This is how I can go about it. And so they're expert at life. And Baladev Vidyabhushan says, being able to deliberate on the meaning of the scriptures on his own. So this indicates some level of understanding and application. There's a jnana where you have knowledge, theoretical knowledge, and there's the applied knowledge, which takes more understanding. How do I apply this knowledge to my specific circumstances? So it says they're able to deliberate on the meaning of the scriptures on their own. They have some ability to apply the knowledge. That's the way I take that. And then we have udasinaha, free from care. Prabhupada translates it in the word translations, and then he other places says a neutral party, indifferent, without affection for anything material, and Garuda Prabhu translates it as detached. And Prabhupada says in the purport, a devotee never takes the part of a particular party, so here's a neutral party. Therefore, he is carefree. So he's. So again, Baladev Vidyabhushan says not taking sides. So they're thinking alike there, but Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur gives a little bit different meaning. Udasinaha means to be unattached to material persons, so it's more of a detachment there, and because also when we're playing favorites or taking sides, usually there's some attachment to the people we're taking sides for. We're biased towards our friends and our family. And that also makes us have more cares. We're concerned, now first, it's bad enough when we're concerned about our own, bodies and minds and things that are in us, but then we have the whole other, we have to worry about everybody else's at the same time. This is the devotee cares about them, but they care for them on a deeper level. He wants everybody's spiritual benefit. And that's not a worry or a care, but it's a deep devotional desire, that kind of mercifulness. But when we are attached to others, and we think also that we need them for our happiness, then we're worried, not only for ourselves but for others. And if there's some dispute that we have to take sides on, then we're involved in their drama as much as our own drama, because we consider it to be part of our own. And then there's gata vyataha, free from all distress. Garuda Prabhu says free from anxiety, and Hridayananda, His Holiness Hridayananda Maharaj says unperplexed. That's how they translate it. And in the purport it says he is never pained, Prabhupada says this, because he is free from all designations. He knows that his body is a designation, so if there are some bodily pains, he is free. Baladev Vidyabhushan says free from distress even when wronged by others. So again, these are kind of corollaries and repeats of what we had in the first verse. Prabhupada's talking again when he says designations, he's free from this false ego. Sarva Arambha, of all endeavors, Prabhupada translates it, and he's the Paratyagi, the renouncer of all endeavors. And Prabhupada says the pure devotee does not endeavor for anything which is against the principles of devotional service. Baladev Vidyabhushan says something similar. And he says, for example, constructing a big building requires great energy, and a devotee does not take to such business if it does not benefit him by advancing his devotional service. He may construct a temple for the Lord, and for that he may take all kinds of anxiety, but he does not construct a big house for his personal relations. So this is, we'll see a couple more examples of this later on. I think it's coming up soon. We don't have many verses left. but where it says you don't do something, it says that you renounce all endeavors. Okay. But here it's defined in a devotional way. You don't do anything against the principles of devotional service. For service to Krishna, you endeavor, even intensely. But it means non-devotional activities or things that are not connected, rather than just literally renouncing all endeavors, renouncing all things not connected to spiritual life, to devotional life. We'll see that with, I think it's, silence, and there's another one I can't remember off the top of my head that will be defined in a particularly devotional way. And then 17, and again there's some repetition here. One who neither rejoices nor grieves, who neither laments nor desires, and who renounces both auspicious and inauspicious things, such a devotee is very dear to me. And here Prabhupada says, a pure devotee is neither happy nor distressed over material gain and loss. Is neither happy nor distressed over material gain and loss, nor is he very much anxious to get a son or a disciple. That comes from, can't remember if it's Vishwanath or Baladev. I think Baladev. Nor is he distressed by not getting them. If he loses anything which is very dear to him, he does not lament. Similarly, if he does not get what he desires, he is not distressed. He is transcendental in the face of all kinds of auspicious, inauspicious, and sinful activities. He is prepared to accept all kinds of risks for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord. Nothing is an impediment in the discharge of his devotional service. Such a devotee is very dear to Krishna. So Prabhupada gives interesting, and he's talking here about the end part where they renounce auspicious and inauspicious things. Shubha Ashubha, auspicious and inauspicious, pratyagi, renouncing those things. And he's giving an interesting take on it. Baladev Vijayabhushan gives kind of a literal one. He says he has given up both pious actions and impious actions because they are both causes of bondage. We've talked about this previously, right? Where both where real, genuine purification means that you're not interested in either of the types of reactions of karma. That means that becoming spiritually realized means, Krishna said to Arjuna right away, that transcend the modes of material nature. So it's not that we're trying to perform actions that will give us something materially good in the future, and usually we're trying to do that and avoid things that will cause us pain in the future. But they said that the devotees perform action that burns up all of their karmas. Because if you have any karma left over in the account, you have to take another birth in order to enjoy or suffer that karma. But so it says that devotional service is, we talk about akarma, has nothing to do with any, is considered inactivity. It has no material effect, except it burns away the accumulated good and bad karmic reactions. And so that's what the devotees would do. They don't worry about either of these two things. They do something that's beyond them both. That's really what it means. They think that by serving Krishna, all positive things for them will happen. They don't need to perform good karma separately to do that. And they feel that whatever, if there's negative karmas that they've had in the past, those will be burned up through devotional service. So they don't worry about this material good and bad. They follow the spiritual path of devotion, which of course we see the qualities they have. They're not doing anything bad, but they don't do it looking for a material result. So therefore they don't get one. They get a transcendental spiritual result. But Prabhupada here looks at it differently. He said he's transcendental in the face of all kinds of auspicious, inauspicious, and sinful activities. He is prepared to accept all kinds of risks for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord. Nothing is an impediment in the discharge of his devotional service. So, Arjuna was worried about that this is going to be sinful, this is going to be a problem, this is going to be that. The results aren't going to be good. And so here, Prabhupada is saying that whatever Krishna is desiring, nothing will impede him in his service. Even if it looks unpleasant, even if it's means avoiding something that seems pleasant or auspicious, whatever pleases Krishna is what that person will do. So he puts a little even stronger devotional spin on it. Srila Prabhupada does there. So now to 18 and 19. We're only going to 20. That'll finish the chapter. So we're getting a little close. Looks like we may actually finish on time. I was a little concerned there. And so here is 18 and 19. One who is equal to friends and enemies, who is equipoised in honor and dishonor, heat and cold, happiness and distress, fame and infamy, little pairs here, who is always free from contaminating association, always silent and satisfied with anything, who doesn't care for any residence, who is fixed in knowledge, and who is engaged in devotional service, such a person is very dear to me. Okay? So many of those we've gone through before. There's a Sangha Vivarjita, free from all association. And Prabhupada says in the verse, he qualifies it in his verse translation, free from contaminating association. Here's another one. Yeah, this is the one. It says free from all associations. Doesn't mean they're completely alone. Just like giving up all endeavors doesn't mean there's no action. But a certain type of endeavors are not done, and here certain types of association is avoided. And Prabhupada says, he adds that little comment there in his verse translation, contaminating association. A little purportful translation. And Baladev Vidyabhushan says, does not associate with materialistic persons. We talked a lot about that in the Nectar of Instruction, about how to associate with devotees and how to avoid contaminating association, even if you are in the physical proximity and interacting with materialistic persons. We talked a lot about that, but that's what it means. We're trying to develop our deepest relationships with others who have the same outlook on life and goal of life, and that in that way we help each other to succeed. I've said many different places and many different people say that you're known by your association. Birds of a feather flock together, and you take on the qualities of those with whom you associate closely with. It's just the way it is. And the next one is Mauni, or silent, and there's a devotional take on this too. Prabhupada gives it in his purport. He says, he does not speak of anything but the topics about Krishna, therefore he is called silent. Silent does not mean that one should not speak. Silent means that one should not speak nonsense. One should speak only of essentials, and the most essential speech for the devotee is to speak for the sake of the Supreme Lord. So, we talked about that in the Nectar of Instruction, how to control the tongue, both in tasting and in speaking. To use the tongue in ways that elevate us and rather than degrade us. The next one is also a similar thing. Anaketa, having no residence, doesn't mean you have to be homeless. Prabhupada also said in other place he translated, without attachment for a residence. And that's what Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says also. Anaketa means that he is not attached to his material house. Mm-hmm. So whatever is required in the service of the Lord, if it means traveling around or moving from place to place, We have affection for hearth and home, and that shouldn't impede our devotional service. The attachment is for Krishna. And then here we have Prabhupada's purport. He says, we may find some repetition in the descriptions of the qualifications of a devotee, but this is just to emphasize the fact that the devotee must acquire all these qualifications. So we're coming back to, we mentioned a little bit before, how the qualities come from sadhana, they come naturally through a practice of devotion. And the Prabhupada says, one who wants to be recognized as a devotee should develop the good qualifications. Of course, he does not extraneously endeavor to acquire these qualifications. I'm going to emphasize extraneously. In the PowerPoint, I have them in bold. That was my doing. I want to emphasize that. To acquire these qualifications, but engagement in Krishna consciousness and devotional service automatically helps him develop them. Because this is something that confuses people a lot. That simply by our sadhana or our core processes of devotion, all the negativities go away and all the positive things come about. That we're going to hear about this in Nectar of Devotion. These are the two principles of devotional sadhana bhakti, devotional service and practice. The negativities go away and the positive things are manifest, positive qualities come about. And I mentioned before, that's because they're innate, intrinsic qualities of the soul. And so devotional practice begins to awaken the soul. All right, now but the only thing that we know about our soul, if we're not practicing devotion, and if we're not going a little deeper, is that we're consciousness. But who is conscious and who we are beyond that, we don't know much about. We talked about that in the second chapter. And so we're devotional. We're someone who's devotional and has all these qualities. Actually, it's what happens is as we awaken the soul with spiritual activities, then these qualities naturally begin to manifest. So then, as people then think, the point I'm going to make from that is, it's not that we make no effort to behave properly and passively wait for the qualities to automatically arise. Another typo in my PowerPoint. Sorry about that, guys. Prabhupada specifically says extraneous endeavor. So he qualifies. He says doesn't say make no endeavor. Like we may do that. We may be, we may have an angry personality or not be very compassionate or all these kinds of things, right? And if we just say, well, someday I'm going to overcome this, and I'm not going to worry about it for the present. Sorry, Prabhu, but I'm just angry, and that's the kind of person I am, and someday it'll be gone, and right now I'm not going to worry about that. That's not what Prabhupada means. He says extraneous endeavor. So I'm going to try to give you an idea of what that means. I'm saying it's something that's outside of our ordinary lives and service. I can give you kind of example. Like, say we want to try to develop these qualities. Extraneously means, like, say it said before that we be equal in heat and cold. So I decided I'm going to become impervious to heat and cold. So in the wintertime I wear summer clothes, wear shorts and a t-shirt, and in the summertime I'm wearing a coat and hat and gloves and boots and the whole kit. And when it's 90 or 100 degrees, and I'm going to learn to become equal by this kind of endeavor. I'm going to artificially trying to do that. This sort of thing. You have traditions that do that. So we're supposed to be free from pain, so we subject ourselves to pain. We try to put ourselves in a position where we'll be insulted or mistreated, so that we can get over it. But these we're doing it separately from our normal life, separately from our devotional service. And Rupa Goswami says, in the Nectar of Devotion, that really makes our heart hard if we're trying to kind of harden ourselves to these things, with a separate, disconnected endeavor. So this is what it means, extraneous. I'm going to toughen myself up so I can do that. Hmm? What we've discussed already is that Krishna becomes active in our life when we surrender to him. And we even read earlier in the purport where Prabhupada says if something negative is happening to the devotee, he's thinking that this is Krishna's mercy. He's reducing the outcome, but he's giving us something that's actually going to help us to advance. We know that Krishna takes a hand in our spiritual development. And so he sends things our way naturally that's going to test us. That's going to maybe reveal the weak spots in our character, behavior, and qualities. These tests happen just as a normal course of our life and of our service. We don't have to seek them out. Prabhupada mentions, it says here that, right, that we mentioned how we, even if there's, that we shouldn't make we're satisfied and shouldn't make too much of endeavor even for food. And if food doesn't come, that then they can fast. So people may decide that I'm going to fast, so I'm not attached to food. I'm not worried about that. But Prabhupada says we have certain fasting days that are within our normal practice. The 11th day of the moon, Ekadashi, certain appearance days. Then you fast during those times. But otherwise, to artificially do it, there's no need. Krishna didn't send that to you, right? So when you do that, when you try to artificially or do it extraneously outside of your life and practice, you're deciding this is what you need, even though Krishna didn't send it. So let Krishna help you. Let Krishna send you the things that need to be sent to you, and you deal with them as they come. And so with prayer, with understanding, you try to react to them in the appropriate way. When you fail, you pray, you reflect, how can I do this better in the future? This is endeavor that's non-extraneous. Okay? And we can know that Krishna is sending something that we can deal with that's appropriate, that's what we need when we need it. And we shouldn't think that the proper Vaishnava qualities and behavior lie outside the realm of our spiritual practice. We have the core processes of devotional service, the chanting Hare Krishna being foremost amongst them. We mentioned the 9 processes before, hearing, chanting, remembering, etc. But also, this behavior is part of the practice. And so as I mentioned, these qualities, the behavior, the characteristics, the character that are explained here in chapter 12, they're intrinsic qualities of us as a soul. And so if we remember in Nectar of Instruction, we talked about this niyamagraha, where it says you practice the rules and regulations. If you neglect the rules and regulations, then you don't succeed. If you just practice them kind of mechanically without trying to make advancement, without connecting them, to your real identity, then they're not effective. When we practice devotional service, what we're really doing is we're acting like people who have real devotion, deep devotion. And by doing that, it's not just imitation. It's that we're trying to, the Prabhupada was following in the footsteps, we're trying to act like that because that's who we really are. It's helping us to make a connection with our real selves. And that's why it's effective. That's why the practice does it. Prabhupada says, we're not, what does he say? It's not something that's imposed upon the soul. It's something that the soul already is, and we're simply trying to wake that up. So if we practice these qualities and behaviors and the character by trying to react in the appropriate way to things that are happening, sent by Krishna, and think about that this is who I really am. The reason why I'm not taking to this naturally is because I'm just not awake. So then it's going to work. We'll find that just through our regular practice, the hearing and chanting and remembering and serving in various ways, that we will discover that certain traits and other the things we don't want, that aren't helpful, when they just disappear on their own. And things that we didn't have before will appear on their own. That happens. But generally, not all the things that need to appear so easily, nor all the things that need to disappear so easily. And so in those things, when Krishna sends the experiences, that when we find ourselves acting in the wrong way, then we can try to practice that. We can try to work on those things within the context of what Krishna is sending us. And we do it in this way, thinking that this is my real nature, that can be effective. So I hope that helps to clarify this notion that everything happens on its own, and that only bhakti is required. But part of that bhakti is working in the appropriate way on the appropriate things, qualities and character. All right. So now we're coming to the last verse. Those who follow this imperishable path of devotional service and who completely engage themselves with faith, making me the supreme goal, are very, very dear to me. And here, Srila Prabhupada says, in this chapter, from verse 2 through the end, from Maya Avesha Mano Yemam, fixing the mind on me, through Ye tu Dharmamritam Idam, this religion of eternal engagement, the Supreme Lord has explained the processes of transcendental service for approaching Him. Such processes are very dear to the Lord, and He accepts a person engaged in them. So since even here He seems to confirm that there are processes. Because He's really mentioning only the qualities, behaviors, and and characteristics. So that we should try to act. This is called sadachar, acting in the appropriate way. We need to try to develop this. The core practices will help them to come. Sometimes they happen seemingly quite magically, but there's other ones that are more difficult to remove, difficult to change, and difficult to develop. So we have to work a little bit there. And then he says later on, in other words, as long as one does not have the chance to associate with a pure devotee. Now he's addressing the first half of the chapter, where Krishna was answering Arjuna's question: should I worship your impersonal manifestation or your personal form? And also where Krishna was saying, if you can't take up devotional service, you can do these things. First he said, if you can't take up devotional service at this level, remember me all the time. Then you can practice the regulative principles to be able to come to that plane. And if you can't do that even, then do some service for me. And he says, if you can't do any of these things, you can't deal with any of those devotional things, then you take these other paths. So he's dealing with both of those two things: the question about the impersonal and the personal, and what happens. Here's the ways to do devotional service. Here's what you do if you can't. He says, in other words, as long as one does not have the chance to associate with a pure devotee, the impersonal conception may be beneficial. In the impersonal conception of the Absolute Truth, one works without fruitive result, meditates and cultivates knowledge to understand spirit and matter. So this is what he talked about, Krishna did. This is necessary as long as one is not in the association of a pure devotee. We mentioned that before. The thing that allows people to take up, especially this practice of pure bhakti, is it comes from the association of the devotees. You catch it from others. Fortunately, if one develops directly a desire to engage in Krishna consciousness and pure devotional service, he does not need to undergo step-by-step improvements in spiritual realization. It doesn't mean that there isn't sadhana within bhakti, but it means that these other things that prepare you, that bring you, make it more likely that you'll take up bhakti. So when Krishna is saying, when Krishna starts talking about these things like the meditation, what Prabhupada said, the works without fruit of result, meditation, knowledge, this is what we talked about in the first 6 chapters, this yoga ladder. It doesn't necessarily lead to devotion, but it puts you in a position where it's more likely, and you don't degrade yourself. You're advancing yourself and making it more likely that you'll take advantage of the association when you get it. Because it takes that association of a pure devotee to get pure devotional service. That's when he says step-by-step improvements, doesn't mean step-by-step. We do have to have step-by-step improvements in our bhakti, but he's not talking about that there. Okay. And then this is our last little bit here. Quotations from Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and Baladev Vidyabhushan. Again, what Prabhupada did there was kind of sum up the chapter. They're also giving a kind of a summation of the main idea of the chapter. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, Bhakti, which is supreme and blissful, attainable by all people, easy to perform, and filled with astonishing qualities, so it's very attractive, has been explained in this chapter. Though it has been shown that jnana is bitter like neem fruit, and bhakti is sweet like grape juice, still these two processes are taken up by the respective followers who crave that particular taste. So it's pretty clear what taste he thinks is better, and I think really if we're reading Bhagavad Gita, we will agree. And then Baladev Vidyabhushan says, the devotee should take full shelter, and that's the part of the apostate from the verse, of the nectarian path endowed with good qualities, dharmyamritam. Giving a translation of that part of it. Prabhupada says, in the verse, it is, how does Prabhupada translate? Dharmamritam. He translates it as imperishable path of devotion. But here, went too far. Should take full shelter of the nectarian path endowed with good qualities, which has just been described. That's what he says. So if we have heard Bhagavad Gita attentively and have understood, these passages should be clear to us. That we should understand Krishna is pretty clear. He's going to keep speaking to us, and he's going to reinforce these things. He's going to, in the next chapters, he's going to give us a lot of tools that are going to help us to progress. And at the end, of course, he's going to repeat this. You know, that pure devotion is the only valuable way to go. He's given us enough information that we should be clear on that now. He's going to give us more information that's going to help us practice that, and he's going to reinforce it again at the end. That's his message. And we should be clear on that after these 6 chapters, 7 through 12. So that's next time we'll pick up 13, and thank you very much.